Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video I have the latest from the live radar. Run for the latest UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. We are in a cooler period at the moment. The south is still fairly warm, but further northwards it is much fresher, and we have seen quite a bit of rain over the last day or two as that heat did get pushed away. It is going to continue to rain in places over the next sort of 3, 4, 5 days, with potentially some quite heavy rain in places, especially across Scotland. But of course, we've had a very dry past few weeks and past few months in general, so seeing this rain is a good thing. However, as we press into next week and beyond, we are going to see the heat returning, especially for the south, perhaps further northwards as well. But it could be a bit of a north-south split towards the middle of the month. We've got very strong agreement from both the operational runs and the ensembles for very warm air to return from around the 10th or 11th of July, so in around a week's time. Potentially the 15-degree isotherm moving back in, and even a few runs getting up towards the 20-degree isotherm, which would put us potentially into those low to mid-30s once again. So some pretty strong agreement for that. So it does look like another spell of heat, maybe even another heat wave could be on the horizon. But we've got cooler and unsettled conditions to get through for the next week or so. So do remember, if you enjoy the videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Now, if you start on the live radar, it's been a warm day today, nothing too special, but for early July, it's not been too bad. Temperatures have been hovering around the low 20s in the south, more on the mid to high teens further northwards, and you can see a few showers around. I'm recording this around 8:30 in the evening, and still a few hefty showers around towards the Scottish borders, but for most it's a fairly dry evening. And if we put on the temperatures, it is still fairly warm across England and Wales. Over the next few days though, temperatures are going to be very up and down, could be quite warm, maybe mid to high 20s across the south on Friday, but as we progress into the weekend and start of next week, could dip quite a bit cooler. There is the risk as well, as I said, of seeing some heavy rain across Scotland, and we have this yellow warning, very small warning, but across western Scotland through 6 a.m. on Friday until 3 p.m. on Saturday, and it's for a bit of a conveyor belt of moisture. Got strong west to southwesterly winds, warmth building to the south, but nothing too spectacular. Low pressure to the north, and along that boundary we are going to see some fairly persistent cloud and rain. Now, it doesn't look too heavy, i.e. the precipitation rates don't look too high, but for western Scotland, where we've got a lot of relief rainfall with the mountains, it could be sort of 24 to 36 hours of pretty persistent light to moderate rain, and the totals could really tot up. Potentially 40 to 60 millimetres across the period, maybe up to 100 millimetres, and there even could be some strong winds along that boundary. Now, do have a look at the latest UKV. See, not too much going on this evening, clearing away, but through Friday we start to see that conveyor belt of moisture pushing in. Now, you can see the precipitation isn't too heavy, but it's just persistent. It really doesn't go anywhere for western Scotland, at least. Some rain drifting southwards. It just continues through much of Friday into Saturday before slowly clearing and dissipating away. But still plenty of rain to come for pretty much all of the UK. Again, nothing too ridiculous, but a sprinkling for everyone, so that will be good to see. Into the weekends, definitely some more rain in the north, and showers could spread further southwards and more widely, especially through Saturday into Sunday. And then as we progress into Monday, we see again another day of showers before eventually that all clears, and Monday and Tuesday looking fairly dry as we could start to see high pressure nudging back in. We're about a day or two out from the heat potentially returning, so nothing too spectacular here. Low 20s would be the top temperature, but it is starting to lay the groundworks for that heat making a return. As you can see this afternoon, 24 degrees, while top temperature, nothing too spectacular. And into tomorrow, it could get up towards 27, so really decent summertime temperatures, but it is much cooler further northwards of that divide. Of course, that warmth and that humidity further southwards, even though it's nothing too intense, it is going to fuel that rain. Into Saturday, still could be 25, maybe an isolated 26, somewhere across the East Midlands, but that will clear away. And for Sunday, best low 20s. Monday, it's pretty similar, struggling around 20 to 23. So there's quite a few actually going to be below average there on Monday. And Tuesday, similar temperatures in the north, but warming up in the south and the east. And that's starting the upwards trend towards potentially hot conditions. Now, if we go over to the latest GFS, we'll see what's going on over the next couple of weeks. Now, this hotter weather we're looking at towards mid-July isn't sort of a classic southerly wind or classic high-pressure slap bang over the top of us, but what it is just a persistent south to southwesterly wind, and it just continues bringing warm wedges of air our way, just keeping us well above average. So you can see eventually low pressure clears later on. You can see why it's going to be cool potentially Sunday through to Tuesday with a bit of a northerly flow for a time. But the high pressure moves back in. And as we can see around the 10th to 12th, we got this southwesterly wind coming in from the Azores. And being near enough the hottest time of the year, it starts to waft in some very warm air. The 15-degree isotherm moving in, 20-degree isotherm not too far away. Now, it's not too long lasting on this GFS. A bit of an anomaly this run, where it does bring in slightly fresher air for a time, for eventually longer term the heat does return. It comes in with a bit more of a vengeance there towards the latter teens, with the 20-degree isotherm really close by, just across Europe. And again, it's another one of these heat dome situations where a big blob of red here appears across France, Germany and Northern Europe and really doesn't move much at all. So very in line with expectations, this GFS run. A bit of a blip there around the 15th or so of July with fresher air moving in for a time. But apart from that, in line with the majority of other runs. Do compare to the GEM, again, low pressure moving through over the next couple of days with fresher air, but eventually high pressure firmly building in, and again, low pressure trying to push in from the west, so could introduce some storms, but generally speaking looking pretty hot and hopefully dry there through the middle portion of the month. Again, you see the 15-degree isotherm moving in for a time for eventually getting swept away a little bit later on. So fairly in line with the GFS there. And finally, if we check out the latest ECMWF again, fresher conditions over the next couple of days, but eventually high pressure moving in, looking pretty dry and pretty hot there out to day 10. Again, the 15-degree isotherm pushing in for the south. And again, you can see what I was saying at the start of the video, potentially another north-south split with it being much fresher in the north than in the south. But overall, majority would be average to above average, looking really fine and summery there. As said though, because there is that low pressure to our north and west, fine and summery is sort of the overall outlook, but you can never rule out potentially some thunderstorms. But again, that's something that we'll cover nearer the time. It's wasted to look at that now, as we would just purely be speculating with those details. Now, finish by looking at the latest ensembles. You can see hovering around average, slightly above, slightly below over the next 5 to 7 days. But then we go above average around the 10th of July, continue rising to around the 15-degree isotherm, so around 5 to 10 degrees above average. You can see quite a few 15 to 20 degree, that would be heatwave territory, and some 20 plus degree, which would be mid to high 30s territory, but only 3 or 4 ensemble members here, not too many, fortunately at the moment. You see the operation run have that little blip around the 15th, but it does return above average. But you see majority of runs there are warm or very warm there into the middle portion of the month. Precipitation does drop, but does return a little bit around the 15th and beyond, again indicating potentially some lower pressure to move in. 2 meter temperatures, not too bad over the next week, but our average for most, maybe slightly below average in a few spots. And then you can see significantly above average there from around the 10th of July onwards. Mid to high 20s would be pretty widespread. Potentially low to mid 30s could be a possibility at the peak. And if we finish by looking at the latest ECMWF, very similar, hovering above and below average over the next week, and then considerably above average there into the middle of the month, with some very warm runs continuing to appear. So full steam ahead with the risk of some hotter conditions once again into the middle of the month. Again, we'll have to sort of look at the finer details over the next few days as we get nearer to the event and the exact sort of figures do iron themselves out. But at the moment, we are looking at maybe 5 to 10 degrees above average. So maybe nothing too ridiculous, maybe not mid to high 30s. There is a small chance. At the moment, though, probably high 20s, low 30s from the looks of these latest ensemble runs. But yes, hot weather will be returning, at least from the looks of these runs. So do enjoy the blip we've got at the moment, this fresher and cooler conditions with a bit of rain around. If you do not like that oppressive heat we had earlier this week, do enjoy that fresher wind we've got out there at the moment. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.